Okay, here we go again with another episode of Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. As I'm recording this, it is a Wednesday. Today is April 9th of 2025. So this is way in your past. A lot of stuff might already be over with. But we're making some changes at Warrior Concepts and through the Bujinkan Mori no Todo Dojo. So for those of you who are regular followers, you want to check those things out. If you're on the email list, you'll already be getting some notifications. One of those changes are going to start today, which is that up until this point, for those of you who wanted to jump into the part 2 of these classes, Whiteboard Wednesday forms the strategic and tactical mindset and idea, and it covers the principles and concepts to what makes these things work so that you can apply it to your training. For those who want part 2, that happens on our Friday class. We have this Friday master class. There's a little link down there, but don't go to that yet. Right, because that's about to become kind of an archival page. What I've been doing up to this point, for those of you who want that, is every week we update that page. Well, it's over here, right? We update that page with the current week's training, and then those who sign up for that masterclass, great, and those who don't, c'est la vie, right? But if you've been following Kuden and a bunch of these other extra lives that I've been doing, I'm really not in the mood to work with dabblers and things like that anymore. And so we're making some changes. So, and one of those things is that, and I get it, some people, they don't know me, they want to see some training first, that maybe they're just kind of, they're already well on their path, or maybe working with somebody else and they want to augment their training. That's all cool. I'm not here to steal anybody else's students. And some people aren't into it just yet for the full ride, right? For one of our like Ninpo Mastery or Ninpo Elite full coaching programs, they're not in for that yet. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be keeping the weekly that weekly page. I'm just going to switch it over so that it ends up becoming a standalone, like we'll call it an evergreen kind of thing, where it's always there. So if somebody bumps into one of these sessions, they could jump over onto the website and for a couple of bucks grab the part 2 training that is the actual physical class that goes along with it. So it's no longer going to be kind of a hit and miss kind of thing. But at the same time, I'm taking away the Friday master class as just a one and done a la carte kind of thing, because the folks that are typically doing that, they're just piecemealing their training anyway, and a lot of them, either there's no commitment to go deeper or life just doesn't allow for that at the moment. But I'm 62, I have to put my energy and effort into those who, right, are wanting to go deeper. Okay. And the other reason for this, before you think that like I'm an old guy and I don't have any energy or what, it's more about conserving my energy for my own training and things that I'm doing. But also the fact remains that folks that are looking to do long-term stuff, right? They have a certain mindset. They have a certain focus that's very different from, let's say, the hobbyist, right? They like Ninjutsu, they like martial arts and whatnot, but they do it when they have time. They're not the recreationalist who like it so much that they make time for it, right? But both of those people are easily derailed by life issues, who knows, work issues, relationship issues, finances, whatever. And so the winds of change kind of put them out of training, back into training, kind of training, sitting on their ass on a chair, watching martial arts TV training or whatever. So I only have so much time. And the third part of this is, at my stage, the longer and more often I'm teaching the same low-level techniques and the same lower kind of things. I have instructors in place that can do that, right? But Hatsumi Sensei has always warned that if we're not careful and we're not mindful, continually teaching the same lessons can actually thwart and cripple our own advancement because we get stuck in that level, right? And so, like I said, 62. I'm aiming for 108 because in Nikyo there's like 108 defilements that a human being has, and I got started late, so I'm figuring I'm going to need all that time. Even if I don't make it, it's not the point. The point is there's still lots of stuff that I need to accomplish inside the training, outside the training, and things like that. And so I have to be more stingy with my time. So these aren't going away. Kuden's not going away. The master classes are not going away, just going to be more focused in how I do things. Okay. So that being said, at the end of this URL, because it's already long enough, I don't want to add to the one for each week. We're just going to give you a word or two that's going to get added to that so that you can hit the right page. It's already in the description if you're on YouTube. After this is over, I will add it as a comment under the posts on Facebook and I don't know, I've got to figure out how to edit to Instagram and X and things like that. But I'll make that happen so that folks can get to the right place. But this URL right here is going to be an archival page. So it will either have the link, well, it'll have the links to all these pages, but the very top one will be the link to the current one, just in case somebody doesn't get the full memo. Oh, my hat came from Togakure Mountain. So it says Togakure. Okay. Togakure Yama. Okay. Actually, this is pronounced Shi. Right. So Togakshi Yama. Right. Or Zan sometimes, depending on how they work things out. But anyway, it's just one of those little things I brought back from one of my mini trips to Togakure Mountain. Anyway, just in case somebody goes to that, they'll be able to leapfrog. But I'm going to try to be as mindful as possible until the systems are in place and it's hardwired into my brain to make sure that the link that will take you to the specific Friday virtual training class for the one you're looking for that's attached to the class you're actually watching. So part one, right? I give you plenty for free. And then if you actually want the training class and stuff, again, these things are normally like $9. So choose or don't. It's up to you. All right, so that's the admin for this one. We'll get that out of the way. All right, let me bring up my notes here and we will jump into this class. All right, so what we're looking at today is the ninja's Gyaku Waza. We'll talk about what that means here in just a minute. Normally, this is translated by most people as like shoulder locks. Right. So anyway, right? So understanding these things and how they're applied. We're going to come at it from a couple of different angles, but what we're really looking at is taking away his ability to fight. Right? This is about breaking structure. It's about it's a bunch of things, right? There's one key piece that I'll jump into here in a minute, but we're going to take a look at what Gyaku Waza are, what the kanji actually kind of translates to, and how we could be seeing that at a deeper level, right? And this is my best little drawing here of the scapular girdle and how the shoulder joint works together. We're going to take a look at 4 primary techniques that my students get pre-black belt. 1 or 2 of these things are actually a part of the Kyonapo, what most people know as the Kyonapo, but there's different things. We're going to take a look at them from a range perspective. We're going to take a look at it from a how the shoulder's manipulated perspective, so we can keep it easy, but we'll go from there, okay? Anyway, so let's jump into this, right? So, again, I like to start with a problem, right? So most martial artists see shoulder locks, right, as fancy controls or takedowns, right? If you see WWE or whatever, right, and these things get, like, they do Oni-Kudaki quite a bit, right, where the arms are locked up and whatnot, but you ever see these guys just like, and the other guys getting it? If that happens and the shoulder doesn't break, the defender's fucked. Okay. And usually the problem is, and we're going to cover this on Friday, the position of the arms are not where they're supposed to be, and we're actually fighting ourselves, or the arm was not put, we didn't find the right spot. So I'm hoping that by covering between this and Friday's class, everybody will know as soon as one isn't working, how to know by feel what they're missing so they know whether to bail, whether it needs to be turned into something else, or how to make a slight adjustment that will seat that that shoulder and compromise things, okay? Because the way most of our techniques work, but especially things like Gyaku, right? Gyaku Waza. Gyaku Waza is just a general term. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the way these things work is if we have the position right, without brute force, with the position right, it shouldn't matter if he resists or we apply pressure. You're going to hear a bunch of sucking, popping, crackling noises followed really quickly behind by his girl-like scream, okay? And that's the way that shit works. If we have it right, it doesn't take force, it doesn't take strength, it takes proper positioning and proper timing. If we have it right, the litmus test for knowing that a technique is right is it doesn't matter if I apply pressure or he resists, it all backfires on him, okay? Keep that in mind, all right? So that's part of the problem. The other part of the problem here is people that are what I call like 3 steps outside the cave as far as caveman fighting. They're either wrestlers or they're pounding, punch, kick, whatever. They fight the way everybody else fights, which is fine. Do you? But these people just keep coming out of the woodwork with comments like, well, that's bullshit. You can't do that in a real fight. That'd never work, whatever, okay? The number of times that I have applied these things under pressure against a trained killer as a military cop and a counterterrorist specialist. So perhaps I was dreaming, perhaps I was on crack, never, okay? But anybody that's dismissing this obviously doesn't know how it works, okay? And I also double check people every once in a while, right? Usually I just let comments like that go. But sometimes I'll say, I'm sorry that that technique didn't work for you, or it was quite a challenge when you went to learn it. And usually what they respond with is, I've never bothered trying to learn that technique, right? Well, then, right? Saying that something works that you've never done or you've never seen is like saying that the Russian language or the state of, I don't know, pick one, right? Georgia or some country doesn't exist because you never fucking been there, you never seen it on a map, okay? I understand it's outside your perception, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist, okay? You can't see gravity either, but does that mean it doesn't exist? Okay? So anyway, again, a big thing is they're either flashy or they look too complicated. You can't do that in the speed of a fight and all that kind of stuff, right? But for us, right, for a ninja, for a Shinobi-Warrior, these techniques were never about performance. They weren't about pinning somebody to the mat, right? These techniques are about domination. They're about disruption. They're about breaking structure, right? And they're about ending the threat before it escalates. Okay? If you're struggling to apply one of these things where somebody can get out, hopefully after I give you a few tips today, and if you make it to the Friday class, between those two, those problems will go away. Okay? So today's session is about understanding the real purpose behind them. Okay? These are big things that keep showing up in a lot of Bujinkan techniques and whatnot. Okay? But we're going to focus on this from a high level, and I'll talk about that. I'll talk about why in just a minute. Okay? And we're going to focus on how misinterpretation, right? Misunderstanding of range, intent, target, those kind of things often leads to that ineffective application. Okay, right? So I'm going to talk about. We'll define these things here for a quick minute, and then we'll jump into this perspective. We'll hit it along the way, right? Sorry, just shifting my notes there. Right. So I'm a big fan of diving into not just learning a simple meaning, right? Because anybody can tell you something means anything, and it could mean something specific within a martial context. For instance, in the Gyaku, we have what are known as the Kihon Happo, not those 8 techniques that everybody knows, because in the Gyaku, that idea of Kihon Happo is way more expanded, okay? Like the Tori Tegata, right? The hand techniques or the throws, locks, and whatnot. Yeah, there are 10 of those, okay? Not 5, okay? So it's not the same, okay? But what we want to do is take a look at what it means in a context. Anyway, back at Gyoku, Kihon Happo, there are these 8 areas of study, kind of form a ring, right? 8 areas of study that you dive into much more deeply, so that you're not just learning techniques and you're not just collecting techniques like people collect stamps and coins, right? We are understanding the mechanics, the dynamics, those kind of things. One of those is called ho-ho. I know, sounds like Santa laughing, right? But ho, in this case, is a different way to pronounce the word for leg or foot, which is ashi, okay? So old way of doing it, because it was passed in from China, was not ashi-ho, right? It's ho-ho, right? Ho-ho in this case means leg method or leg ways or whatever, okay? And so it's pointing to studying the structure of the leg, the joints, the bones, those kind of things, how it works, right? In what directions is it strong, in what directions is it weak, right? In what directions is it weak? And it's not just about how to use it for strength, it's also how it can be injured, okay? So it's a deep level study, right? And so that's why I really look into these things, because often we can directly translate something like Gyaku Waza simply is reversal technique, or a technique that reverses something, right? But there's more to this. There's more to this kanji and what it means than just that. And in a martial context, we might have to ask ourselves, like, what are we reversing? Okay. Ho-ho from the Gyoku in other martial systems, another common term for it is Sokuho no Budo. Okay. So martial arts of the legs. But again, it's implying, right? So it's a direct translation, and then there's a meaning in context. Okay. And sometimes, like, if we're missing that, all we're picking up is the mechanical step-by-step stuff. Okay. All right. So let's look at Gyaku, right? This first one, right? Gyaku. This is not Gyaku. This is not Gyaku. This is not, I don't know, hiccup, whatever, right? Gyaku, right? Gyaku. So Gyaku means reverse. I talked about that, right? Reverse can mean reversal, right? Okay. To reverse something. It means opposite, and also means counter. Okay. So opposite and counter. Like to counter something, not the counter you put your coffee cup on. Right? So reverse, opposite, counter, right? What are we reversing? What are we talking about being the opposite of what, right? And what's being countered? Okay. Is it counter, like I'm countering his incoming strike, or is it something is running counter to, like opposite, its norm? Okay. Waza is simple. Waza just means technique, skill, method, that kind of thing, right? So, but Sensei, I thought kata meant technique. Well, we translate it that way, but not literally. So technique, what I said was technique, skill, method, method. Okay, it can also mean action. Okay, interesting, right? Okay, so again, what's being reversed? The opposite of what? Those kind of things, right? We understand technique, we understand skill, whatever, okay? So generally speaking, right, it means a reversal technique. Okay, a reversal technique. Turning the attacker's force or direction or position against them. Okay. Most people have learned these locks. I'm going to use that term until I get to a certain point. Who have learned these locks, they've learned them from a first level training kind of setup, right? Kumiuch or something like that. And here's where people go amiss when they see that thing being demonstrated. One, students see that as, well, that's the way you put it on. No, that's the way you put it on in the dojo when you're first learning it, to understand how it gets applied, where the right places are, and you have a very standardized setup so that you can repeat the same thing over and over again. So if you're making a mistake, you can fix it easier because you're not just doing all this randomized sparring stuff, right? But in the upper levels, these things are caught while the attacker is either extending or retracting their arm naturally, and we catch it. And if that's not happening, then we have to do something ahead of time before we try to apply it that literally steals their arm from them. I will own it for 7 to 11 seconds. Okay? So they won't be able to resist. They won't be able to counter it. Yes, it will work. Right? So again, most people, they can't read into what's going on in a snapshot in time. And that's fine. That's why we train and we keep going up levels, and we don't just keep collecting shit that we're filling a box with. I know 47 techniques. I prefer if my students knew one technique that had 47 endings based on how they can adapt to it and handle it, or work it against 47 different body types and different types of attacker types, than know 47 techniques the same way. And then it's going to fall apart when they're up against all those other variables. Okay. But that's me. Okay. So the key concept here is that these techniques are not just arm locks, right? They are strategy in motion, right? They are directional disruptions. They are structure breaks, as in, let's use a different term instead of shoulder lock, right? They're shoulder dislocations, okay? And I don't mean a little bit, okay? And they are energetic and psychological shifts used to stop the attacker before he can continue, okay? If you dislocate somebody's shoulder, if you do imagine taking an action figure and rotating that arm in a way that the connection pops off the torso. Now, they don't have connective tissue, right? But just pop, right? And this thing's just hanging down there, okay? I think I might break more than just his body, don't you? I'm probably going to break his will. I'm going to break his mind because he's going to be so focused on this fucking pain. He's not going to be able to do anything with this, right? If anybody's ever even had a class 1 or 2 strain on the shoulder, you know how limited you are in picking up certain things or applying certain weight or doing certain types of work. It just fails on you, because with those, you've at least stretched, right, or torn the connective tissue that holds this thing together. At worst, like, you've ripped them off the anchor points, and now this skeletal unit, right, it's not held together. There's nothing connecting it other than the muscles and the bag of skin. That's it. Okay. So here's the thing. When I first learned these, I learned them as shoulder dislocations. Okay? I'm okay with somebody saying a shoulder lock, arm lock, a strain or a restraint or whatever. But here was the logic that I was given. If you can do the technique at its highest level, you can blow that shoulder apart. Then you can, or you should be, unless you're just like wild and crazy and that's all you know how to do. But if you know how this thing works and you know how to dislocate a body part, then you should be able to back down your intention, intensity, and amount of force or whatever that's being applied to turn it into a strain or a restraint or a lock or something like that, right? Okay. But that doesn't work in the other direction. If our ability only locks it, only causes their balance to break, only maybe tweaks it a little bit or whatever, and nothing more, then if we ever need to, like, take away limbs so he can't use whatever weapons, he can't get at me, no matter what his will to kill me is, if his body won't do what he wants, well, then that's kind of like the Black Knight in Monty Python and the Holy Grail, right? Lost his arms and lost his legs, but he's still talking smack, right? Come back here, I'll bite your kneecaps off. That's all he's got, right? Unless I step up and give him my kneecap, he's fucked. Okay? So we want to be careful with this, right? So this is my best artwork at the moment. I used to be really, really good at art. haven't had a whole lot of time to practice. But this is known as the scapular girdle. Okay, so this is this unit from back here across the top, and then in the front where the humerus, the upper arm bone, this is the humerus. It's not funny, right? Connects in, and then there's little bone protrusions here, and there's this scapula, right? That's your collarbone, right? Coming across the top right here. Okay, neck's over here, spine. Okay, so this is your scapula, your shoulder blade. Okay, so the way this is connected, it looks one way if you look it up and you look at the skeletal system, right? But what you have are, I need some contrasting color here. So what you have, let's do this. Okay, generally speaking, right? You have two connective tissues, right? The ligaments, right? That cross in the front, okay? Not exact location. Cross in the front that keeps the head of the humerus from falling out here, okay? And so the pressure and pain that you feel when somebody does a technique that stretches this is these things getting stretched, okay? And so the point of these techniques is to work this shoulder joint. As a matter of fact, it's to work the humerus against this connection, like a pry bar prying open a door or prying open, the lid on a big crate or something like that, right? So we're going to use this in a way that contradicts its normal function. We're going to move it opposite what it's supposed to do. We're going to move it in the reverse direction it's supposed to go, so that we're using the bone structure to put pressure on these bands so that they ping, okay? They stretch, they tear, or they rip right off the anchor point. So now there's nothing holding this thing in the front, okay? So if you've ever seen somebody who has one, like a tear or a complete dislocation, or somebody that's healed from one that the doctor just put things back in a relative place, and well, that's good enough, right? You'll be able to function for your life. It doesn't matter what you're doing with martial arts or whatever. I had a student that way, right? And so his arm was like this, right? It reseated incorrectly, right? So anyway, so what we have are 4 different ways, based on today's stuff, 4 different ways to manipulate this to cause that ripping, tearing, and ultimate dislocation, okay? So these are not pretty. And for anybody that winces when we talk about like dislocations and things like that, I once talked about, or did a little video about where I carry my clip knife, right? And I did a video, right? Somebody threw a front kick or whatever. I just kind of stepped back and held my blade out so that the blade would have cut the femoral artery. Oh, some karate guy that in England that was, I'm sure he's very, very good at those kind of kicks, right? Oh, he was just up in arms. Oh, what are you teaching the young kids and whatnot? One, I have all of my videos settings so that under 18 can't see them. So that takes care of that. 2, what am I teaching? I'm not teaching point karate. I'm teaching if this guy is way better than me and I'm going to get my ass torn up, okay? 1, I don't get myself involved in fights. So this has got to be an attack that was unwarranted, and I don't want to be here. And I couldn't de-escalate it. So, yeah, I'm going to take his leg out of the fight. If he doesn't get it fixed soon, he's going to bleed out. Okay? And yes, we also have scripts and procedures for handling the legal system afterwards. Because if you don't, if you're a 21st century ninja or martial artist of any type, and you're focused on self-defense, and you have not also studied and or prepared for the possibility of having to deal with the legal system, even after you survive that, then you're not prepared for all phases of a self-defense situation. You may be able to beat him, but if you can't renormalize your own system fast enough and not carry that trauma forward, because your family needs you, your job needs you, you need you, right? That's problematic. And if you saved yourself against him, but that was the easiest problem because now you might have to worry about not getting ass raped in the prison shower, right? Because you screwed up how you were describing the situation and all that kind of stuff, right? That's called winning the battle and losing the war. Anyway, all right. So I'll keep referring back to this. So here's a big mistake that people make. We are targeting the shoulder joint, right? Well, of course we are, Sensei. It's a shoulder lock. Yeah, but to watch most people, including when I first learned it, right? They understand it's called a shoulder lock, but they don't understand what they're supposed to be targeting. Okay. So we're targeting the shoulder, not the elbow, right? Here's what I mean. When we get to these techniques, I'll write them down here, right? The elbow, we're doing something to the elbow, or we're controlling the elbow. Because when you do any Kansetsu Waza, you do any, I guess this will work, right? Kansetsu Waza. Waza is what? Technique, action, yeah. Kansetsu, joint lock. I don't care if it's this one. I don't care if it's to your ankle. I don't care if it's something to the neck, whatever. Okay? But when you're doing it to the limbs, to attack any joint, you have to have control of the other two. They have to be taken out of the equation. So all movement, all torque, all everything goes to that thing that you're trying to focus. So if we're doing Gyakute, hand reversal, is a subset of Gyaku Waza. Okay? So Gyakute, if I'm doing a Gyakute, see how far I can turn that? It's because my shoulder and my elbow can move. I can move it even farther. And that's what happens in the dojo. Right? Carry this thing all over the place, right? So to make sure that the wrist gets damaged as quickly as possible, as efficiently as possible, and he's not able to resist it, right? I have to take his elbow and his shoulder out of the equation. So if you study the forms that you're given in the basics, right, the kihon, if you study them, the movements are teaching you how to remove these. And then we have exceptions to Gagiyoshin, Gyoku-Ryu, and whatnot, where if you couldn't remove it, then you use it in a way momentarily to take it out of the equation, right? Like there's these ones where you shove things across this way, but you can only go so far before the humerus and everything runs into the torso and he can't move his shoulder and his elbow again. So now everything done to the hand goes right here. But if he has his shoulder, or his elbow, or his shoulder, we have to remove those. Okay. Same thing here. So while we are doing things at the elbow, we're not trying to destroy the elbow. It's not about the elbow. Okay. So many students mistakenly believe the elbow is the target because it's the obvious point of leverage. But in true Gyaku Waza, we're disrupting the shoulder joint where range, rotation, and function intersect. Okay? Not only does this, it's a ball and socket joint, right? Which means it has lots of motion. It'll swing, right? We can rotate it around. We can also rotate the humerus like an axle in this joint. It has a lot of range of motion, okay? Not as much as a universal joint, okay? And certainly way more than an elbow joint, but, or a hinge joint. So we have to understand how it works, okay? And this, if we don't have, right? So we have to understand that we're messing up this intersection, okay? So again, key anatomical insights, right? The elbow, right, is a hinge, very limited movement, right? It's designed to do this. No, Sensei, I can move my elbow like that. You move the elbow in space there because you rotated the humerus and the shoulder. The elbow doesn't do that. The shoulder allows for that. The elbow does nothing more than that. It's the strongest type of joint that we have, the knee, the elbow, because it has limited motion, okay? Shoulder is a ball and socket joint, so it has rotational movement, okay? Universal joints, right? We give up strength for mobility at the ankles and the wrists, okay? Monkeys can't do this, okay? They also don't have opposable thumbs. So that means that their grips are way stronger than ours, right? But most locks rotate the shoulder to break the structure and the intention. Doesn't always have to rotate it, but we'll talk about those, okay? So little quote from Hatsumi Sensei that I picked up along the way is, you must move beyond where your opponent expects. If he thinks you are taking his arm, you take his heart. I have another one from Takuma Sensei that's even more graphic than that one, okay? So again, when you see these comments that people write, that won't work in a real fight, that's bullshit, whatever, okay? What they're telling you is, one, they don't know how it's applied. Two, it looks too complicated to them. Three, things happen too fast in a fight that you can never catch something like that. Well, if you're doing things incorrectly, then of course, right? Okay. So, all right, so let's take a look at these 4 core techniques, and we'll take a look at a really basic strategic categorization kind of thing here, okay? So in no particular order, we're going to write these things out as Musha-Dori. Musha-Dori, right? Dori means to catch or seize, right? To grab a hold of, okay? Musha is warrior. It's another way to say warrior. So warrior, catching the warrior, seizing the warrior, that kind of thing. Musha-Dori. Another one is Muso-Dori. Muso-Dori. We know what Dori means. Muso in this case means nothing alike. It means variable. It means that it can be done many ways, right? So so it also means no action, okay? Which should imply that it shouldn't take much effort at all to apply the technique, okay? So we'll put down two different definitions here, right? So nothing alike, which means there's lots of ways to do it. Nothing alike. And we will do no action. Okay. Muso catch. Okay. Next one. Let's do Oni-Kudaki. Oni-Kudaki. Okay. Oni is demon, devil, whatever. Okay. And Kudaki, Kudaku means to crush. So Kudaki means crushing, right? So crushing the demon crusher. So I don't have this as like, a definitive kind of thing, but the way I got my head wrapped around an Oni-Kudaki, in that we're targeting the shoulder, and we have to do certain things to immobilize certain pieces. Again, I'm not a dancing monkey today, not demonstrating it. We'll do that on Friday. So the source of the danger that's coming at you. Yes, I know it's his mind, it's his heart, it's his attention, it's his spine and all that. But what can you work with? What's the thing you can catch right off the bat? Okay? The source of the punch or grab or the use of the arm, it's right there. Okay? So if we crush the devil, if we crush the thing that is supplying all of the structure, all of the power and whatnot, if you crush that, then everything else falls apart. Okay? It's like a house of cards. Okay? So Musha-Dori, Muso-Dori, Oni-Kudaki, and then we have one more, Oh-Gyaku. This is not the kata Oh-Gyaku that a lot of people know. Okay? Oh-Gyaku. Oh-Gyaku, O means big. Okay? Not great like Dai, D-A-I. Okay? Big. Right? And Gyaku is reversal. Okay? So very quickly, Musha-Dori, the arm is placed in a position. And I'll give you a quick heads up on something we're gonna make sure people are doing on Friday. To do these Gyaku, we have to seat the arm in a position that is unnatural for it. And we have to know what natural is. We have to know how the body is structured for strength. And there's a difference between something being geometrically straight and something being anatomically straight. Like geometrically straight on my arm, see how that throws the joint out of whack? Okay, it's geometrically, I'm getting as geometrically straight as I can, a straight line. But anatomically straight is like this, where the joints are seated properly and there's no torque or contraindication to things, so it can be strong. Same thing sideways. Okay, when we do hira no kamae, the arms are out at about a 30-degree angle to front. okay? Like you're wrapped around a big beach ball. It's not this. If we're doing this, we're stretching the front of the shoulder joints open and bringing our clavicles together, jamming it against the upper spine. Well, that's fucking stupid, okay? Looks like somebody just fell off a tall building and, okay? So a lot of people, I know I did when I first started, try to do these locks with the arm, right, out here where it's anatomically straight. Because as soon as they start bumping into things, this person's going to start adjusting because it's going to get uncomfortable, okay? But the lock is done from geometric straight, okay? So here's what I want you to remember. Through the shoulders, let's do a simplified drawing here. That's a nose. You have scoliosis. Okay? Okay? Bow legs too. Okay? So get rid of the arms for a second. Okay? You're lining up 3 index points to be able to actually damage the shoulder. Okay? Point of one shoulder, point of the other shoulder. Just because of the way I have extra space over here, we have A, we have B, and then depending on the technique itself, whatever, right? Okay. The other elbow or hand is point C. It's a straight line through. The only exception is Oh-Gyaku, because Oh-Gyaku, the arm stays close to the body, because we can swing the arm way up here really far because the joint's open in the front. But in the back, as soon as we try to go backwards, the humerus hangs up against the back of the scapular girdle and gets stuck. So to lift my hand higher, I have to bend at the waist. I don't really lift my hand higher. I know we do stretches in class and all that to increase range of motion, but we're increasing range of motion. Ultimately, we're getting it into a position where it gets stuck. So this is the only one that doesn't work off the standardized A, B, C kind of thing. We'll cover that on Friday. All right. So Musha-Dori, Warrior Catch, Muso-Dori, nothing alike, no action, Oni-Kudaki, Demon Crusher, Oh-Gyaku, big reversal. So now what we have are 4 techniques. Cool. But how about if we understand like how we're going to damage these things? Okay. Because I don't care if you know the names. What I care about is that you know how they affect the shoulder. Okay. So a Musha-Dori, right, looks like this. See? A, B, C. Okay. Not this. People struggle like this. They can't understand why their partner can just turn around that shoulder and punch them or not get locked up. It's because when they carried the arm and they scooped it, they didn't walk the structure to here before they started that lift. Because if they did that, as soon as they started that lift, things would go up. Okay? So Musha-Dori, okay, I'll talk about range here in a minute, is it rolls the shoulder joint backwards. Okay? Rolls the shoulder joint. We're lifting the elbow up and forward, but it's rolling the head of the humerus backwards. Okay? Muso-Dori is the arm is out straight, right? Anybody knows Ganseki Nage, that forward throw, right? Ganseki is a Muso-Dori done laterally to throw somebody. Muso-Dori is typically done directing them down to jam them up. So everything's out straight, and then the hand or the wrist is either held or pulled backwards as pressure is applied through the elbow joint. Right? So when I talk to people about making sure that they have a Muso-Dori position with their shoulder, what I mean is this. The head of the humerus is out in the chest cavity. It's not seated in the scapular girdle. Okay? It's this. So you can be pushing on an elbow all you want, but if your partner is moving forward, it's because you don't have this. Okay? So that's still doing what? Okay? And normally we roll it this way to get it. Okay, because if I call something a Muso-Dori, there's generally downward or downward angular pressure. Right? Ganseki is a Muso-Dori throw, but if we have somebody coming through laterally, we're just going to check his legs so that it creates a launch point. Right? So what does that do? It rolls the joint forward. Okay? It's done this way, drive him into the ground. Okay? Oni-Kudaki. Oni-Kudaki, the arm is in an L. So now we have A, B, C. See in the first two, Musha and Muso. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. I know the elbow's in there. Pick elbow, pick hand. It doesn't really matter. Okay? 3. Oni-Kudaki. 1, 2, 3. The lower this is, the more they get this back, unless you recognize that he's trying to escape and dropping it, and you can shift in a way that catches it into a Musha-Dori. Okay? My upper level students have to do something called throw flow, where there's no such thing as a failed technique. Okay? A failed technique is one that you don't have anymore and you're still trying to fight to get. Right? Stop being married to techniques. Okay? So any failed technique, unless you are blacking out or dying, any failed technique is actually the setup for something else. So they have to know what's happening. In the scrolls, it says never do a technique that's not already working. So we don't predetermine the technique. Right? We enter with the intent to apply, but if things change, we recognize where they're going. Right? So one of my teachers, he had this way of doing it, and a lot of us would kind of catch up on it. It was kind of self-talk. So I'd step in there, right? Maybe I'm doing an Oni-Kudaki, right? And I step in and I go, ha, 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 I got this. And he'd slip it, right? And I go, oh, that's what you want. Oh, that's cool, right? Yeah, I'm good with that too. Okay. So the whole idea is whatever he does, I let him lead the dance, because if he's leading, he's showing me how to kick his ass. Most people think if he's leading, I'm losing. No. He's leading, I'm okay. It's like the woman or whoever's following in the dance, right? One person is leading, the other person is in touch with that and staying along with it. The only problem with the difference between this and dancing is with this, our partner always falls down. Okay? Your dance partner saying I'm not going to appreciate that. So Oni-Kudaki, it's up this way, right? It's like a Model T, the crank for a Model T, Ford, those old cars, rotating these things. It's like this is plugged in, and then that's right. So the humerus isn't being scooped or moved this way. It's being rotated like an axle in the humerus, right? Just shredding this stuff in there. Okay, so it's this way. Okay, it's not this. It's not this. Okay? It's not. That's locked in place. The structure that goes on here keeps this from going up, down, or it keeps it from moving like this. So when I apply pressure, this just rolls. Okay. So an Oni-Kudaki rolls the shoulder joint or the head of the humerus which way? Backwards. Cool. Okay. Oh-Gyaku, I could be trying to do a Muso-Dori, right? And before I catch this thing, he rolls. You ever been doing a Muso-Dori and your partner does this? Okay. Well, he just put himself in an Oh-Gyaku. You just have to know that. Because when the arm is really close to the body, I can lift this, jam him up. But if when you're doing an Oh-Gyaku, he turns and shifts it out here, he gets his shoulder back unless you know that he just put himself in a Muso-Dori, and you can change it. Okay? So an Oh-Gyaku rolls the head of the humerus which way? Forward. So now we have two techniques that roll the shoulder backwards and two techniques that roll the shoulder forward. Okay, that's cool, Sensei. I'm still trying to figure out like which one I would use, because like, you know, what if I try to apply one and I lose it? Or okay, so these two, we'll take them off as heels if I need to take them backwards. Ta-da! These two will take him off his toes if I need to take him forward. Ta-da! So these two are using Omote-Gyaku principle. Omote-Gyaku takes the person off their heels. These two use Oh-Gyaku principle. They take him forward, okay? Let's not muck up things too much. All right. I don't know what you guys were thinking. Okay. This is what we mean by not collecting techniques. Reading beyond the mechanics so that you can understand what the hell it's actually doing and how all this stuff is connected, so that you're not trying to go through your Rolodex under pressure when he's trying to stab your lights out, right? So, but this is still pretty open, right? We have two that roll the shoulder back, two that roll the shoulder forward. Maybe it's only slightly interesting to you, okay? But let's look at range, okay? So Musha-Dori, right? So it rolls the shoulder back. Musha-Dori, okay? It's close range. I'm going to be really close to him because my arm's going to be right here. The rest of my body is pinning this in place so he can't go anywhere, okay? Most people think that Musha-Dori is done with the arm to the elbow, okay? It's actually done first with my torso to his forearm to start wedging things this way, and then when that strength breaks, then we can do other things, okay? So range is close range, okay? Rolls it forward, yes? Okay. I'm sorry, back. Rolls it back, okay? Oni-Kudaki, not going to be in the same place. Musha-Dori, the elbow's here. Oni-Kudaki, still rolling it backwards. So Oni-Kudaki is long range. Okay? I'm going to be standing farther away from this guy. In Musha-Dori, we're almost shoulder to shoulder. Oni-Kudaki, okay? We could look at this, whether you're facing him, whether a limb is behind, all kinds of things, right? But so in one, he's right here, and I'm levering that elbow because it's in a V position. In the other one, I'm way out here. My closest arm to him is right here. And then the other arm is here. I'm making this L shape, and then his arm creates an L shape, and there's a box in here. You should be able to see the box, okay? Should also be shaking your own hands. Not this, not backwards, because in the heat of August or December, January for my Australian friends, or he's bigger, stronger, whatever, and he applies pressure, it's going to pop your hands apart. So pop your hands apart, okay? I want them in a place that when he applies resistance to try to get out, it pushes my hands together. We'll cover that on Friday. Anyway, so where was I? Oni-Kudaki, okay? So Oni-Kudaki is what? Long range, okay? Muso-Dori, way out here. Closest arm to him is at his elbow joint, not on the elbow. Not on what mommy taught you was the knot with the elbow, which is this knob that's a part of the ulna bone. If you're putting pressure right here, there's a reason he can fight his way out, because you're not affecting the joint itself. Right? You're trying to use brute force. If we put that leverage right in that space between the end of this bone and the beginning of this bone and apply pressure, you're right at the perfect point of ideal leverage, okay? So we're way out here. I'm out at his hand and his elbow at best. So Muso-Dori is what? Long range. And then Oh-Gyaku, I'm going to be right beside him, right? Taking him down. So Oh-Gyaku is what? Close range. So not only are we giving you two techniques that take the shoulder backwards, so you have two options if you got to go backwards. We give you two that go forward if you got to go forward. But look what just happened. We have one taking you backwards that's close range, one taking you backwards that's long range. One is taking you forward that's long range, one's taking you forward at close range. And if he tries to adapt and move out of these things, he almost always, and if you know what you're doing, you just help him a little bit. You know, if he's freeing himself up from one, he's slipping into the next. So he's either going to go long range to close range to try to get out. He could try to go long range to longer range. There's the way to do that too. And we have other Gyakute. We have types of Muso-Dori where I'm not behind his arm doing this. I'm actually on the inside of the arm, and I kind of wrap around his upper arm this way. Catch. It's called Te Makura, right? Hand pillow. Catch that. Kick his leg out as you're doing a sitting break fall. Pop his face right into the freaking floor. Make him get up looking like a pug dog. Okay? So, but once you learn these things, you can let names go away because you know where you are and you know how the machine works. So our job is to make sure that our machine is always in a good position. So we don't punch like, let me get to it from this direction. We don't punch making the arm go geometrically straight because we weaken the shoulder joint. And if he slips that and goes for an arm bar, we just gave it to him. This will blow out very, very quickly. So we go anatomically straight. And I know that this is anatomically straight because when I stand in Shizen, there's a slight bend in my arms. That's natural straight. Not that. I know you get some extra reach, but power diminishes. Okay? So look what we just did. Close range going back, long range going back, long range going forward, close range going forward. Okay? So this is what happens when we step outside of just collecting it, step 1, step 2, step 3. Okay? So, and these aren't just variations on a theme. They are directional tools. They're built for different positions, different intents, different ranges, and different necessary outcomes. If I need somebody to go on his back, then I'm not doing one that's going to take him forward. Okay? So there's a if you know what a maxim is, it's kind of this understanding, right? Within the Bujinkan. Okay? This is born of obviously of Watsumi Sensei's lessons and the other master teachers and whatnot. The technique is born not from kata, but from the situation. The technique becomes what it must be. Okay? That goes right back to that lesson from the scrolls, right? The way to always have the perfect technique or the right technique in any given moment is to never do a technique that's not already working. These are things you catch, not jump on and try to monkey wrestle them into the ground. Okay? All right. So that kind of leads us into why most students struggle with these things. Okay? Common mistakes. Thinking they're attacking the arm instead of the structure. Another one that I would throw into that is not really knowing how the structure is built. So you can't oppose something. You can't reverse it. You can't counter it if you don't know how it's built and how it's supposed to work. Okay? You're just guessing. Okay? They end up focusing on the pain instead of the posture. Okay? It's about breaking structure. Right? And they focus on using strength over angling, balance, timing, those kind of things. Okay? So a little quote here from Takamasa Sensei, way back in the day, right? To know the bones is to know the ghost. When you control structure, the spirit of the attacker leaves. Okay? So we're not just breaking his body, we're not just breaking body parts. We're breaking his will, his commitment, his confidence in himself, his plan. Right? This guy's screwed. Okay? And even if we don't break his commitment, he can't get at us even if he wants to in that moment. There's a whole other discussion to be had, and probably for a Kuden, that if you're dealing with somebody who, yeah, you do one of these things, he can't get at you and whatnot, but you didn't break his commitment, you didn't break his will. Never discount somebody going away and fuming with your name on their mind, that when they're healed, or even before they're healed, phone call or whatever, and a bunch of other shit comes in your direction. That's a whole different side of ninjutsu that most martial arts never factor in because they're only worried about winning or losing this engagement. They never consider somebody coming back and whacking their ass later, or going after their family, or, okay? So again, the Takamasa say, quote, to know the bones is to know the ghost. What that means is if you understand how the body's built and structured, right? And you take that, if you control that, you shake him at his core, right? So when you control structure, the spirit of the attacker leaves, okay? Because he's not worried about hurting you. He's worried about not breaking, okay? Instead of worrying about winning a fight, how about if we start focusing on, at the upper, intermediate, and the advanced levels, for you guys, how about if you start focusing on putting him in a position where he can't defend, he can't evade, he can't counter, and he can't attack? Well, what can he do? He can hope you don't fucking kill him. Imagine backing somebody up and they get to the edge of a staircase or the edge of the Grand Canyon and they got this thing going on where they're doing everything they can to not take a step, not fall, and they're just hoping you don't go. Okay? That's a whole different strategic plan. Okay? So if we look at this from a real world application and intent, well, actually, before I talk about those, I almost forgot. Don't forget, like, you get the idea, right? Anyway, so real world application and intent, okay? So these aren't designed for the dojo. So you have to be careful. Just like we talked about knowing the difference between geometrically straight and anatomically straight and when you want to use one or the other, right? We also have to understand the difference between dojo training and real world application. In the dojo, we can only take these things so far and then we have to stop. But we don't confuse soft training or controlled or safe training for developing fucking crippled techniques. I see people doing soft training because you're not supposed to hurt your partner. No. A properly applied technique will cause pain. Yeah, that's defined as hurt. But what they meant is don't do shit in an unmindful way where you damage your partner. Okay? Because your partner, at a certain point, should be learning that the only way out of this damn thing, because if somebody falls down and can do a roll or can do a simple break fall or whatever out of a Musha-Dori or an Oni-Kudaki, it's not being done right. Musha-Dori and Oni-Kudaki, remember I said the spine was over here? All these vertebrae, okay? That little spot right here between T8 and T9. T is for thoracic. That disc right there, okay? That break point is a major flex point in the body. When these techniques are done, the ones that roll the shoulder back, when they're applied properly, well, even the ones that go forward, because they keep you from bending over at the waist. But when they're taken back, what ends up happening is it scoops things in and it jams this. And so the chest ends up lifting up and forward. Not, they can't lay down. It takes the hip assembly, the waist, as the biggest joint in your body, it takes it out of the equation. Okay, so it's not the same. Okay, so these aren't for the dojo. Right, these are to shut down violence quickly. Okay, these are to make someone unfit to continue, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. They don't want to fight. Okay, and they are designed to give you the space to escape, to finish, or de-escalate from a place of control, right? Like you could apply it as a lock, right where it takes him up and back. You just step back and kneel and lay him out on the floor and maintain that so it forces his torso away from you. And from right there, you can go, your choice. This is either over or that shoulder's never going to work right again for the rest of your life. Right? That's what I mean by de-escalating. Not like, are you finished? No, we're either going to finish him, we're going to cause him to decide to finish, be done, right? Or I'm creating a quick moment where he's now, and I can get the hell out of there. It's not about winning. In the upper levels in the Bujinkan, Hatsumi Sensei has always taught us, stop thinking about winning and losing. Think about controlling the program or the the situation. Okay. So key takeaways that I want you to have here is that fast doesn't mean rushed. Right? When I say applying something quickly, I don't mean you're just like assholes to tin cups and just trying to get it on as quickly as possible. I mean, you know exactly where to go, and you know as soon as you get there, everything's going to be easy. Okay. And soft doesn't mean weak. Okay. Soft training is for his safety, because a properly applied technique, whether I apply pressure or he applies resistance, will blow that shoulder apart. Okay. And also lock doesn't mean pause. It means end. When I lock this, it's like putting a padlock on something you want to close up and keep other people away from. Okay. Now, does he have to do extra work and all that to get into your closet and all that? Yeah, but we get the idea, right? I put the deadbolt on, I put the little lock on the knob on, put an extra whatever, right? It ends the ease of which they would have normally had to just do whatever the hell they want. As long as he can do whatever he wants, you got too much to have to worry about. We need to minimize the options he has. And the scrolls say 3 options or less in any given moment, but never less than 1. If you drop somebody, well, actually not even 1. If you drop somebody to 0 options, and sometimes 1, they'll do shit that is, for instance, our way out of these things that are perfectly applied, and he's doing it as a control. Okay? See, it's not always a good idea to blow the shoulder out anyway. And here's why. If he gets me in this position and I can't get out, I can't get at him, I can't escape or whatever without damaging myself, then I break that shoulder and I take him out, and then I go get fixed. Okay? So we have to know how to do it from this side as well, just in case we have to get out. Okay? And don't tell me that that's just parroted words, because I'm not going to explain the situation, but I've had to do that. Okay? The adrenal rush is just, okay? It can either crush you or, right? So you need to make sure you have a serious why before you do stupid shit like that. Anyway, so my shoulders are, they've been strained, sprained, and otherwise not fully dislocated, but really, really, really close. And so I have to, anyway. So what else do we have here? Final thoughts. Gyaku Waza is not about cranking an arm. It's about destroying an attacker's balance, will, structure, all that. Physically, mentally, and strategically. Okay? So I cannot reinforce enough that these techniques are not optional for serious students. We never know what tools we're going to need. So for my serious students, these are ones that know you can't get out of doing. No, well, I don't really like those. I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit because the universe doesn't give a shit. Right? The attacker actually hopes you don't train in most of these things. Right? But the attacker doesn't know how to deal with these. It's kind of like bullying, right? They'll make fun of you for stuff like this, right? They're hoping that you'll just throw it away and not bother training, because it's easier to get you to not train in certain things that they tell you won't work than it is for them to have to deal with it when you whip it on their ass. Okay? These techniques require deeper understanding than just form repetition. Step-by-step moves. Okay? And these techniques are about mastery of control, of space, of structure, of ourselves. Right? We are controlling. This is just another way to control the narrative, but we're not speaking. Okay? So if you want to make it in for part 2 of this, and where I'm going to be fixing a lot of mistakes that people have, so that when they leave that class, maybe not all of these, but at least 1 or 2 of them, they're going to be way, way better at getting it, keeping it, or if they start to lose it, how to either regain it or know what it's shifting into, so they can just flow from one to the next one. And while they technically lost a technique, they didn't lose him. Okay? They're still going in the same direction. All right. So let me shift my screen here a little bit. All right. So to get to this page to sign up for the Friday class, everything's the same that you see on your screen right there. But after training, you're going to put another hyphen and the word Gyaku Waza. Okay. So he's going to add 2 words to it, right? Gyaku Waza. So if this were the word training that's at the end of that URL right there. Put a hyphen, the word Gyaku, hyphen, the word Waza, land right there on the page. You'll be all set. Okay. And then it's going to be a fun one. Okay. Because I'm going to be honest, these techniques are challenging to get. Okay. But once you know physiologically how they work and how the technique opposes that, it reverses when you get the right when you get the right counter and the right opposing positioning to it, right? What ends up happening is it reverses their strength. It reverses their ability to use that joint. It takes it away from them. Okay, so a lot of this stuff is, we might call it counterintuitive. Okay, because brute force. This is one of those techniques that when I'm working with my students, I have to remind people quite often that doing it faster or harder doesn't make the technique right. It makes it wrong, faster or harder. Okay. And the goal of this training always, and I know a bunch of folks are, they're barely tolerating the fat old bald guy teaching stuff, but who knows? They might learn something from me. The reason I can still do this stuff at this shape, at this age, at this hair, whatever, is because we get better with age. And Taijutsu, because it's supposed to be applied with minimal effort, maximum results, we keep getting better as we get older and as conditions change, because it's about timing, distancing, and angling, not about muscle, brute force, torque, those kind of things. Torque will happen all by itself. Okay. So this is often confused because it hurts as soon as I catch somebody, because it levers that joint as soon as I catch them. And so in Japan, often I'm working with somebody that I don't normally work with, and they'll go, soft training, right? That's not old school stuff. Old school? What the hell are you talking about, right? Soft training, not supposed to hurt your partner. I didn't hurt you. It hurt. No. The technique is supposed to hurt. It's damaging the body, or it's threatening the body with damage. It's supposed to hurt. Okay? There's a difference between doing it correctly, where I can slow down and get the same result. Huge difference between that and intentionally trying to hurt your partner, or not really giving a shit because that you're hurting your partner, because all that matters is that, like, I'm going to make this work no matter what. Okay? You can do that, but see, it's much easier for me to get a technique on somebody. Okay? Position myself so when he takes that next shot and I turn and I look like, okay, and all the video cameras are rolling and it looks like that happened by accident. It's way easier to do that than to go, motherfucker. Careful. This is coming from an ex-cop. Don't be the douchebag that's creating evidence against yourself that'll be presented in court. So that no matter what you say, the video shows something else. Okay? We're not just protecting ourselves against him. We're also protecting ourselves against people who were not there and have little to no experience in this realm. That is the odds stacked against you, because they're going to believe or disbelieve whatever story the lawyers paint. They weren't there. So no matter what you say, they have preconceived notions that, right? That's the fucked up part. Okay. Ultimately, if you stick around long enough, you will come to realize, hopefully, that all this physical stuff, as confusing as it's been, as challenging to learn the techniques, as coordination, all that kind of stuff, as difficult as this was, this is the easiest part. Understanding the strategy, the tactical applications, the principles and concepts that drive it, that's the next phase. And understanding life consequences of applying something. That's where the nin really has to come in. Okay? Because Aunt Minnie not liking you after you saved her ass, where yesterday she was all proud that her grandson, granddaughter, aunt, or niece, nephew, whatever, right, was, knew this stuff and was able to protect them, and then they watched the monster come out for a second. That's the heartbreaking part. Because I think most people can coldly handle a stranger. That's not where it stops or starts and ends. Right? Anyway, Gyaku Waza, we're taking away his ability to fight mechanically, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually. Right? It's about breaking structure. It's about way more than things. But there are these 4. So come in on Friday. If you don't know all of them, you'll leave knowing all of them. And if you have had any problems with them, you can also ask questions. If you're in on the live Zoom thing, you can ask questions, right? Or if you sign up for it and you can't make it for the live one, you're still going to get the recording. You can shoot me an email and say, hey, since I'm having a problem with this one, and it happens, whatever, right? That way I can focus on things. And if, let's see, if you don't know them, that'll fill it in. If you're having a problem with one, it'll fill it in. And if you do know it and it's working decently, I'm going to show you how to ratchet that up too, without applying extra force. Okay, that'll be cool. Right? So I think that's it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Don't forget, we're under 4 weeks at the moment for spring camp. It's coming up May 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. So if you're listening to this after May 2nd, 3rd, and 4th of 2025, you missed. Right? We are focusing on Kotoryu secrets and Yari spear. From the perspective of how do I get this 7 to 13 foot fucking long ass pole in there in a way that it's quick, it surprises him, it takes him off guard, and then we can take those principles and concepts and add it to our shorter weapons and our taijutsu to up our game on that side. Because chances are most of us aren't going to be walking around with a damn spear, and those of you who are deserve to have the popo show up. Anyway. But what we're looking at doing is understanding the principles and concepts for moving a large weapon so we can take those and apply them to shorter weapons and taijutsu to completely change the game from what most people are doing, right? If you can't make it, either way, right? If you go to onlineninjaacademy.com/spring-camp, we have a virtual version, we have a single day option, we have the full weekend, live, virtual, and if you scroll all the way to the bottom, and even if you can't make it for it, life gets in the way, right? All the options at the bottom. The one on the far right is the one to order the video recordings. Okay, so you can pre-order those if you want them. Right? That's it. That's all I have. I'm starting to lose people because, well, they got what they came for. So that's it. I'm going to go. I will talk to everybody again next time. Be safe. Train hard. See you next time.